The Syrian sun was relentless, turning every surface into a stovetop and every breath into a gulp of heat. Sergeant Maya Cross crouched in the narrow shadow of a supply Humvee, her back slick with sweat beneath the armor of her flak vest. Around her, the outpost buzzed with the muted chaos of returning patrols, boots stomping through gravel, grunts laughing too loudly, the occasional bark of a squad leader pushing tired soldiers toward post-mission debriefs. But Maya didn't move with them. She was locked in battle, not with the enemy, but with her rifle. The M4 carbine lay across her lap, its bolt halfway forward, stubbornly jammed after the last firefight in a windswept ravine 4 clicks east of the base. Grit from the storm had gotten into everything: water bottles, skin, lungs, and weapons. She'd felt it lock mid-burst, and for a split second during the engagement, it had been just her sidearm and cover fire from Jenkins. She hadn't panicked. Kraken taught her better, but she hadn't forgotten the feeling either. Now, kneeling in the dirt, she muttered under her breath as she disassembled the weapon piece by piece. A fine, rust-colored film coated the bolt carrier. She blew into it, shook her head, and reached for the brush. "Piece of junk," she murmured. "You had one job?" Most soldiers would have dropped their rifle at the armory and let the techs handle it. Not Maya. Old habits. Kraken habits. You never let your weapon out of your hands. Not when you'd seen what she'd seen. Behind her, boots crunched over gravel. Heavy, deliberate steps. Someone with weight. Command weight. She kept her head down, wiped her brow with a dust-smeared sleeve, and popped the lower receiver free. "Focus, Sergeant," a voice said, smooth but commanding. She looked up. Standing over her was a tall man, with salt and pepper hair cropped close to his scalp, sleeves rolled neatly up his forearms, his tan uniform as crisp as a politician's handshake. He wasn't wearing body armor. Didn't need it. This wasn't a war zone for him. He carried authority like armor. His name tag read Harlan. The stars on his collar confirmed it. Major General. Maya rose quickly to her feet, rifle still in hand. "Sir?" "At ease," he said, eyes drifting from her face to the disassembled weapon, then, slowly, down to the left side of her vest. She knew the moment he saw it. His posture shifted by a hair, just enough to register. His brow creased, not in confusion, but recognition. His jaw didn't drop. He didn't gasp. Just locked his eyes on it like it was a ghost. It was the patch. Sewn just above her trauma plate, subdued in black and gray stitching, was the Kraken insignia. A stylized octopus wrapped in barbed tentacles around a trident, its eyes narrowed in a permanent scowl. The edges were fraying. The color had faded from too many washes, too many patrols. But it was unmistakable. The Kraken unit. "You served with Kraken," he said. Not a question, a statement. A landmine. Maya didn't answer right away. Her fingers twitched instinctively around the barrel of the rifle. It wasn't loaded. She never kept a round chambered in base, but her training screamed caution all the same. The general's eyes didn't blink. "I did, sir," she said finally. Her voice was low, calm, practiced. "Your cross," he added, more to himself than to her. Maya Cross, last listed Kia. Ukraine, 2022. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. He already knew. Harlan took a step closer, inspecting her like a man staring at a ghost long rumored, but never confirmed. "You know that patch shouldn't exist." Kraken was. Shut down, buried, really. "Yeah," Maya said, returning to the weapon in her hands. Funny thing about burying things. Sometimes they crawl back out. He narrowed his eyes. "How did you end up here?" "Infantry? No Spec Ops insignia. No honors. Your jacket's clean, too clean." "Paperwork's a funny thing, too," she said. So is erasure. Harlan stared at her for a long time. Around them, the bass continued on in background noise. Radio squelching, Humvees. Idling, a soldier laughing somewhere in the distance. But here, in this quiet corner, the air was heavy with ghosts. I read the reports, he said eventually. Dindro was a mess. Bad intel. Everyone dead. Friendly fire. Cover-up. Your name. Was on the confirmed Kier list. I know, she said simply. So what are you doing here, wearing that patch? She looked up, her eyes flinty. Remembering. The general folded his arms. That memory could get you in trouble, Sergeant. Maya gave a short, humorless laugh. Then trouble's overdue. There was a pause. For a second, she thought he'd walk away, say nothing, file it under things best left unspoken. But instead, Harlan did something unexpected. He looked not at the patch, but at her eyes, as if trying to read the spaces between her words. What he saw must have given him pause. I want you in my tent, he said, voice clipped. 1600 hours. Bring your file. Your real one. Yes, sir. He turned and left Dot. As she watched him disappear into the command trailer, Maya returned her focus to the rifle. The jam had cleared. The bolt slid back smoothly now. She wiped her hands, inspected the patch once more, and for the first time in a while, felt the prickle of history catching up to her. Kraken was rising, and this time it wouldn't vanish so quietly. Maya sat alone in the mess tent, her tray untouched, the soup already cooling under the blast of the wall fan. Most of the other soldiers had cleared out. A few lingered at the far end, playing cards with the hum of diesel generators backing. Their laughter. She barely registered them. Her eyes kept flicking to the patch on her vest, as if it might vanish if she stared long enough. That old croaking insignia, the octopus wrapped in steel, the trident rising from the sea, had always felt like armor, not just fabric, a piece of something sacred. Now it was a signal flare. Harlan had seen it. Worse, he'd recognized it. And not the way people recognize something from a news headline or a military gossip thread. No, Harlan had looked at that patch like it was a key to a door he'd once helped lock. A secret that wasn't supposed to breathe. She hadn't meant for him to see it. She only wore the patch on base, and only during downtime. She never mentioned Kraken, not to her squad, not even to Jenkins, who dragged her unconscious across a ravine under sniper fire too. Months ago, he didn't know who she really was. None of them did, and that was the point. Until now. At 15:58 hours, Maya approached the command tent. Guarded by 2 MPs, it stood like a lone brain cell in the middle of the outpost, always active, always watching. The soldiers at the entrance gave her a double take, then gestured her inside. She ducked under the flap, heart steady, breath controlled. Kraken training ran deep. Fear and adrenaline didn't show. Inside, the tent was cool. A whirring portable. AC rattled in the corner. General Harlan stood near a map table, a tablet in one hand, his other resting on a thick folder, thick enough to carry the weight of secrets. Sergeant Cross, he said without looking up. You're early. You asked for my file, sir. She held out a plain manila folder, thinner, lighter. Or at least the one they let me keep. He finally looked at her. He didn't smile, didn't blink, just waved her toward the folding chair across the table. She sat. Harlan placed the tablet down and leaned on his elbows. The light above them cast harsh shadows across his face, carving out years of fatigue she suspected were never listed on his record. You should be dead, he said plainly. I was, she replied. Once, twice, if we're being technical. You? No, I helped sign off on Kraken's budget 5 years ago, Harlan said. I never met any of you. We weren't allowed to. They called you non-reproducible assets. Not even soldiers, tools, no names, no funerals. Maya didn't flinch. That's how they kept us obedient. He opened the thick folder. Inside were grainy recon images, redacted reports, even a blurry photo she recognized, taken 3 years ago in Dnipro. She was in it, circled in red, her face barely visible beneath camo paint and a helmet. This picture was taken 48 hours before the ambush. You were already being watched. She leaned forward, scanning the documents. By whom? Contractors. A group called Valencia Systems. Off books, fully privatized. You were sent to retrieve intel, but your actual mission was to walk into a trap and let them destroy the evidence. You were the evidence. Maya swallowed hard. The rage came slow, coiling around her spine like a whisper. They burned us. Deliberately, he confirmed. A beat passed. She said nothing. Neither did he. Finally, Harlan added, 3 survivors, you said? She nodded. Myself, Viga, Samir. We split. No contact since. We made a pact. Pact? Stay buried? Stay safe. Don't let the ghosts chase you. Harlan leaned back, exhaling slowly. You broke the pact. I didn't mean to, she said, tapping the patch. This was never supposed to be seen. I wear it because I can't forget. I won't forget. He regarded her in silence for a moment, then asked, why join a regular unit? Why not disappear completely? She looked him dead in the eye. Because I'm still a soldier. Because Kraken didn't die in that canyon. We were murdered. And murder deserves answers. He said nothing for a long time. Just stared at her, as if weighing the value of truth against the cost of action. Then he stood. You're going to have company soon, he said. Intel officers. Maybe someone from JSOC. They'll come smiling, ask you polite questions, maybe even offer reassignment or commendation. Maya smirked. And if I refuse, they'll call you unstable. Say you suffered trauma, maybe even fabricate a psych eval. You'll be discharged, silenced. So why are you warning me? Harlan walked to the flap and pulled it back. Because I'm not the one who buried Kraken. I just helped dig the hole. And you, Pross, you're what's crawling back out. She stood too. Her hands clenched at her sides, but her voice stayed level. So what now? He gave her one last look, a flicker of guilt hidden under layers of command, and said, you better keep that patch. You've got bigger eyes on you now. And the ones that burned Kraken? They don't like it when their dead start talking. Maya walked out of the tent, the late afternoon sun stabbing her eyes. She didn't blink. She touched the patch on her vest, fingers brushing over the threads, as if confirming it still existed. Still real. Kraken wasn't just alive, it was awake. Maya hadn't thought about Dnipro in months, not in detail, not where it counted. But after walking out of that tent, her boots crunching over the gravel in fading sunlight, the memories returned, not as flashbacks, but like acid behind the eyes, heavy, burning, permanent. That night, she sat in the watchtower alone, supposedly pulling a late shift, but really just staring east, toward Ukraine, toward the shadows of a city that had taken everything and given her back nothing but silence. Kraken had bled there, and no one even sent flowers. Asterisk in 2022, Dnipro was supposed to be a simple sweep, deep recon, no engagement. Just mapped the corridors of a rumored weapons facility on the industrial outskirts. The satellite photos showed rusted rail cars and collapsed walls. Nothing active. Nothing alive. That was lie number 1. Lie number 2 was that Kraken had full support. The mission brief was clean, clinical. High-value intel retrieval. Secure, extract, ghost out. Standard Black Op fare. No air. Cover, no QRF. Too sensitive. they were told. This one's off the books. Even then, it felt off. There were 7 in total. Cross, Vega, Samir, Reyes, Burke, Lane, and Harrington, the captain. The kind who never raised his voice because he didn't have to. He'd been in the sandbox since before most of them could vote. They trusted him with their lives. Maya remembered landing outside the city in a stolen utility van, the back converted into a mobile comms rig. She remembered the radio static, the cold, the wind howling through the fractured windows of dead factories. The whole place smelled like old oil and something deeper, rusted metal and betrayal. Then came the firefight. ****. It started with a flashbang, not from the enemy, but from behind. From friendly lines. Burke went down first, throat torn by shrapnel. Reyes dove over him, screaming for air support that would never come. Samir returned fire into the dark, then screamed, "Those are our rounds." Harrington didn't hesitate. Fallback positions. Now, they sold us out. That was when Maya saw the drones, small, fast, American. Not recon. Armed. One tore through Lane like tissue. Maya fired until her barrel burned, dragging Vega by the straps of her vest into a crumbling doorway. "They're pinning us," Vega shouted. They knew we'd come. Another explosion. Rocked the ground. Samir took a round through the calf, but still carried Reyes, bleeding and limp, into cover. A captain stayed behind to draw fire. The last thing Maya saw was him raising his rifle like a flag, firing into the dark until something cut him down mid-shout. By dawn, only 3 of them were breathing. ****, they hid in drainage tunnels for 2 days. Vega's arm was shattered. Samir had gone gray with blood loss. Maya barely held it together, scavenging food from nearby villages, always moving, always listening. When the radio finally crackled to life, the voice on the other end didn't ask for a status update. It issued a kill code. Echo-Black-Raven-Delta.KRAKEN single quotes. Failsafe. If a team was truly compromised, intel exposed, identities blown, command was authorized to burn them completely. The code meant you are no longer assets. You are liabilities. It meant they were already dead. Maya smashed the radio against a wall. They went dark, buried their tags in the snow, swapped uniforms with corpses from a nearby skirmish. Maya forged discharge records in the ruins of an old embassy office. She used dead soldiers' IDs. She even cut her hair. Samir changed his name. Vega disappeared completely, and then they scattered like ashes. Maya never saw them again. ***, back in Syria, her hands clenched the railing of the watchtower. Below, floodlights lit the perimeter of the outpost like a stage. A few guards patrolled the wire, too far to see her face or the tears she blinked back. The ghosts of Kraken weren't haunting her. They were screaming. She still dreamed of Burke's last breath, of Ray's blank stare, of Lane's body convulsing under drone fire, of Harrington turning to face the inevitable without flinching. She dreamed of silence, the silence that followed the betrayal, the silence of a radio that called in execution orders instead of reinforcements, and that damned patch, still stitched on her vest like a scar she refused to cover. People called Kraken a myth now, a ghost unit, a failed experiment in asymmetric warfare. Some said they were real. Others believed they were never more than smoke and rumor. An elite squad built from the best of multiple branches, trained to operate in legal gray zones, to do the things even JSOC wouldn't admit to. But Maya knew. The truth, they were real. They were lethal, and someone had been afraid of what they knew. That's why they were burned. Quiet knock came at the watchtower door. She tensed. One hand instinctively dropped to her sidearm. Cross? It was Jenkins' voice, calm, curious. "You okay up there?" She sighed and forced her voice steady. "Just needed air." A pause. "You missed Chow. Again. You're going to get another warning. Add it to the list." He chuckled and stepped away. Maya waited until his footsteps faded. Then she pulled the patch off her vest and held it in her hand. She stared at it, the octopus, the trident, the lines fraying like threads of the truth. Coming undone, she didn't cry. Not anymore. But she made herself a promise. If Kraken was buried in lies, then it was time to dig Dot. And when she did, when she found Vega, when she found Samir, they'd light a signal fire so high, even the bastards. And DC couldn't ignore it. The ghosts were coming, and they were done bleeding in silence. The air inside the temporary ops tent felt colder than it should have. Not because of the portable AC unit humming in the corner, but because of who sat across from Sergeant Maya Cross. 2 officers, neither of whom belonged to the base, flanked the fold-out table. Their uniforms were regulation perfect, but their posture said otherwise. Too stiff, too still. Not soldiers, not really. One wore glasses and held a clipboard. The other rested his fingers casually near his belt, just close enough to brush against the concealed holster under his jacket. He hadn't touched his water. He didn't blink much either. They didn't introduce themselves. No name tags. No rank insignia. But Maya had seen their type before. "Let's make this simple," said Clipboard. His voice was calm, clinical, with the faint edge of condescension, like he was used to being obeyed without question. "You served with Task Force Kraken, yes?" She didn't answer immediately. The tense canvas rustled slightly in the wind. Outside, base life carried on. Orders barked, tires on gravel, a Black Hawk thundering overhead. "Your file shows you were declared tier during Operation Foxgate. But here you are," he continued, tapping his pen against the clipboard. "Alive, quiet, and yet, somehow, wearing a patch that no longer officially exists." Still, she said nothing. She could feel the second man watching her like a loaded weapon. Not fidgeting, not bored. Just waiting for the command to pounce. Clipboard leaned forward. "You're aware, Sergeant, that continuing to display the insignia of a classified disbanded unit without authorization is a direct violation of military protocol, potentially punishable under Article." "I earned that patch," Maya said, finally breaking the silence. Her voice cut through the tent like a blade, and I don't recall it being revoked. The man blinked, thrown slightly off script. The second officer's gaze didn't shift. If anything, its sharpened clipboard recovered quickly. "You were part of a highly sensitive, now decommissioned unit. Your reappearance raises concerns. We need to know everything you recall from your final operation." "Everything?" she asked, crossing her arms. "Like how we were sent into a kill zone with no backup. How the mission objectives changed mid-deployment. How we were painted as casualties so that no one would ask questions when friendly drones opened fire on our position." The man's jaw tensed. "You're making dangerous allegations." "I'm stating facts," Maya replied. "You want me to spill classified material? I'll do it in front of a Senate panel, or maybe a camera crew. You're still under contract, Sergeant, and that means I can be imprisoned, disappeared, or burned again." She snapped, then leaned forward, lowering her voice. "What you really want is for me to disappear quietly like the rest. Pretend I'm some PTSD-riddled grunt who mistook a legend for a memory." Clipboard didn't reply. The second man, silent till now, finally spoke. "Where are the others?" His voice was gravel. American, but hardened by something colder. Not a voice from a military career. More like the kind of voice that gave orders in back rooms, where signatures didn't exist. Maya met his stare. "If I knew, I wouldn't tell you. "Don't be brave, Sergeant," he said. "Be smart. I was smart once," she said flatly. "That's how I got into Kraken. Now I'm just pissed." Clipboard stood abruptly, signaling the end of the session. "We'll be reviewing your service record and mental health status. Expect a full psychological evaluation before the end of the week. You may be temporarily reassigned." "To where?" she asked. He smiled, just barely. "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere you won't be heard." Asterisk, asterisk. An hour later, Maya stood outside the tent, sun glaring off her sunglasses, sweat clinging to the base of her neck. She'd said too much. Or maybe not enough. Either way. It didn't matter now. She was on their radar. Across the base, she spotted General Harlan standing on the helipad, talking into a satellite phone, his free hand clenched behind his back, like he was holding back frustration or fury. Maya watched for a beat, then turned away. She walked to the armory, signed out a cleaning kit, and sat alone on a crate behind the barracks, disassembling her rifle again. But her hands moved slower. This time, not from fatigue, but thought. They would bury her again if they could. They'd label her unstable, assign her to a desk in Germany, or worse, send her on a suicide mission and lose her paperwork along the way. That was the machine. That was how it dealt with broken parts. But she wasn't broken, not died. She pulled the old hard drive from her footlocker, encrypted, ancient, battered, but intact. She hadn't touched it in years. Inside were Kraken's final mission logs, audio, tactical readouts, drone telemetry, and a video. One she hadn't dared watch since DNIPR. It was Harrington's last recorded message, cached to the team's COM server before everything went to hell. She watched it now. On the screen, the captain's face was bloodied, eyes sharp, jaw set. "If you're seeing this, it means the op failed. We were set up. This wasn't enemy fire. This was execution. If you make it out, tell them the truth. Tell them Kraken didn't die in the line. We were murdered in the dark." The screen went black. Maya sat there in silence, her throat tight. They had underestimated her once. They wouldn't make that mistake again. The next time they sent someone, she'd be ready. Kraken wasn't a patch. It was a promise, and she was done being quiet. General Harlan didn't expect her when she entered the tent. It was late, past 2,200 hours, and he was hunched over a table cluttered with SATCOM readouts and classified dispatches, the light from a lone lantern giving the illusion of calm. But Maya saw it in his posture. He hadn't slept. He'd seen something, or someone had whispered in his ear. She stepped inside quietly, the heavy flap falling closed behind her. He looked up, eyes narrowed, hand already reaching to power off his tablet. But when he saw what she was holding, he paused. A small, battered hard drive. Black, military issue. Old enough to be obsolete. Dangerous enough to be lethal. "You're not supposed to have that," he said. "I wasn't supposed to survive Dnipro." "Either," she answered, walking up to the table and placing it gently between them. "But here we are." Harlan didn't touch it. Instead, he motioned to the chair across from him. Maya sat down. Her hands were steady, her voice clear. She didn't blink when she spoke. "Not this time. Everything you've heard is a lie. Every after-action report, every obituary, every line of sanitized bullshit they fed to Congress. We didn't die in a clean firefight. We were bait. We were evidence. And someone decided Kraken was easier to erase than explain." Harlan leaned forward. "Walk me through it." She nodded once, pressing play on a tablet connected to the drive. The screen came to life. It began with a body cam feed. Viga's perspective, time-stamped and geotagged, footage from their infiltration through the Dnipro industrial complex. You could hear static-laced comms chatter, the crunch of boots on concrete. Then came Harrington's voice, clear and calm. Eyes on objective, no movement, proceeding to breach. Maya's voice joined moments later. Watch the upper floors. Glass is busted. Could be lookouts. The team moved like shadows, swift and silent. Harlan watched as the footage played through the first explosion. Burke's scream cutting through the feed. Reyes swearing. Vega breathing hard as gunfire erupted from nowhere. Then came the drone's high-pitched whines. Impact flares. Unmistakably American make, and equipped with Hellfire variants not yet available to standard infantry. Harlan cursed under his breath as the feed showed Reyes go down. Vega dragging him back, and the blood on the floor spreading like a stain. Across the truth. The video ended with Harrington's final message. A shaky, half-lit transmission cached from a helmet cam as he took cover behind a crumbling pillar. They're not enemy rounds. Check your grid. This is a wipe. He looked. Straight into the lens. Valencia Systems. It's a hit. They don't want this facility found. Burn your gear. Go dark. Live. One of you needs to live. Static silence. Harlan sat back, hands tented in front of his face. The flickering light from the lantern danced across the lines on his forehead, like scars waiting to speak. You kept this all this time? He asked. Maya nodded. It's the only reason I haven't been found. It's insurance. And the others? Vega went underground. Samir's probably off-grid, somewhere in Morocco. We agreed to disappear. I broke the rule when I joined. Back up. I missed the fight. Harlan stared at her, as if trying to see the soldier behind the ghost. This. This is a problem, he said quietly. Maya laughed, not cruelly, but with the hollow weight of someone too tired to pretend. It always was. That's why they erased us. No medals, no graves. Just 7 names buried in digital ash. You think this is enough to prove it? It's enough to burn someone, she said. The contracts, the drone telemetry, Harrington's ID code on that last message, it's all traceable. Not officially, of course, but enough to get someone. To talk. Harlan stood and walked to the back of the tent, pouring himself a glass of warm water from a thermos. He stared at it for a moment before downing it in a single gulp. He turned back. If I forward this, I'll be watched, flagged. I'll be dead on paper before sunrise. She stood to face him. And don't send it. What? Keep it. Hide it. Leak it quietly. Whatever you do, just don't make it official. That's where they control the game. Harlan smiled grimly. You've learned how the system works. I learned by being on the wrong side of it. They stood in silence. After a long moment, Harlan stepped forward and picked up the drive. He turned it over in his hand, as if weighing the cost of memory itself. This is the kind of thing that makes enemies, he said. Maya met his eyes. Sir, I've had enemies for 3 years. What I haven't had is an ally. He hesitated just a second, and then pocketed the drive. You have one now, he said. **** Later that night, Maya lay awake on her cot, the canvas ceiling barely visible in the dim red glow of the emergency lights strung across the barracks. Most of her squad mates were asleep, snoring, mumbling, tossing in dreams that probably involved sand, dust, and gunfire. But her mind was a war zone of its own. The truth was out now, carried in the hand of a general she couldn't fully trust. But maybe, just maybe, could believe in. It was a gamble. But Kraken had always thrived in the gray. She reached for her vest and ran a finger across the patch. Kraken wasn't a story anymore, Dot. It was a lit fuse, and she had just handed over the match. They always say the Pentagon sleeps, but that's a lie. The building doesn't sleep. It waits. At 0345 Eastern. A classified packet of digital data was decrypted inside a secure SCIF on the second sublevel. The technician who decrypted it wasn't told where it came from or who requested it. But he'd seen things like this before. Black Ops records, biometric flags, mission metadata with missing timestamps. A kind of material that existed only in redacted fragments and nervous whispers. It bore the internal tag, Kraken, Unauthorized Unit Data Recovery, Op Foxgate. 2 hours later, the Secretary of Defense's private aide summoned a meeting. 5 names, 1 room. No official record. By 0800, Maya Cross had become a problem again. Asterisk, they called themselves the Panel. Not a real title. Just a name passed between men and women too connected to be labeled. A mix of brass, suit, and shadow. They didn't answer to any single chain of command. They were the mechanism buried beneath the machine. The ones who made inconvenient stories vanish. And today, Kraken was inconvenient again. A woman in a navy blazer, Donna Kellis, Defense Intelligence Liaison, slammed a printout onto the table. A freeze-frame image of Captain Harrington's final message. This is a wipe. Valencia Systems. They don't want this facility found. Where the hell did this come from? She snapped a man across the table. Colonel Avery Weller, deep. Black budget controller, folded his hands. Harlan, Syria. He's seen it. Cross gave him the data dump. She was confirmed KIA. Another voice muttered. She got better. Weller replied dryly. They all stared at the image again. The old Kraken insignia was visible on Harrington's shoulder, dark and unmistakable. The octopus and trident, worn like a secret only the dead should carry. And the footage? Kellis asked. Verified. Matching logs pulled from project. Winter Trace. Her version includes drone telemetry and names. Kellis inhaled sharply. That includes contractors. Weller nodded. And command authorizations. There are signatures on these strikes. The table went quiet. They all knew what that meant. Someone at this very table might be implicated. Asterisk, in the West Wing of the White House, the National Security Advisor was briefed. In an underground NSA relay center in Maryland, a senior analyst found a flagged transcript of a soldier named Vega making contact in Chile just 3 months prior. The second Kraken survivor. In Langley, an older man in a gray suit placed a call to an unlisted number in Dubai. And back in Syria, a kill team was quietly placed on alert. Asterisk, General Harlan stared at the encrypted reply on his Satlink terminal. It was curt, sterile, and full of words. That meant nothing. Field assets CROSS under evaluation. Stand by for transfer instructions. Do not initiate further intel actions pending Washington oversight. He read between the lines. Translation. You found something we buried. No, stop digging. But Harlan had already made the second move, the one they couldn't rewind. The drive had been copied. Not once, but 3 times. One to an off-grid secure cloud in Switzerland. One physically mailed to a retired senator in New Hampshire, and one uploaded, with careful timing, into a closed internal channel, watched by a few curious staffers. On the House Intelligence Subcommittee, he'd been in the military long enough to know that data was like water. If it found a crack, it flooded everything. And now the dam was straining. Maya knew the change had happened the moment she stepped outside the barracks and saw the guards. 2 MPs, not from her unit, standing at parade rest outside her door, not protecting her, but watching. When she reported to the motor pool, her orders were voided. When she went to the range, her access was denied. When she requested a call to her sister back home, comms were suddenly under maintenance. Isolation 101. She'd seen this playbook before. Push the target into paranoia, limit movement, fray credibility. A slow, silent erasure. But she wasn't afraid. She was furious. That night, as floodlights bathed the outpost perimeter, Maya climbed to the roof of the barracks and stared out at the desert. Her vest beside her, the patch clutched in her palm. They were trying to put her back in the ground, but they'd made one mistake. They gave her time, and time was something she could weaponize. She pulled a battered notebook from her cargo pocket, waterproof, faded, lined with names. Old call signs, safe houses, rendezvous points only 3 people knew. She underlined one name, Samir. Raven Calcine, Turkey border SDATIO, and she was done playing the good soldier. If they wanted Kraken silent, they'd have to come silence her themselves, and she'd already cleared her rifle. Asterisk, asterisk, in Washington. A senior aide to the chairman of the Intelligence Committee slipped a USB into an encrypted drive. He paused at the folder name, Op Foxgate, unredacted, Kraken _survivor, a 1_ feed. He didn't recognize the name Cross, but as he pressed play on Harrington's final message, his blood ran cold. This wasn't a failure, the captain said in a low, steady voice. This was murder. And we know who ordered it. The aide looked over his shoulder, heart hammering. For the first time in years, the shadows didn't feel so safe. Asterisk, asterisk, Maya folded the Kraken patch, slid it into her vest, and smiled to herself. Let them come. Let them spin their stories and brief their suits and draft their silent reports. Because she wasn't the only ghost anymore. And soon, the whole world would know. Kraken never died, it just went dark, and now it was surfacing again, one truth at a time. The whispers started as static, a closed-door briefing here, a heavily redacted memo there. A low-ranking analyst in Fort Meade flagged a strange archive labeled Kraken, disavowed, but it vanished before he could open it. At Langley, a retired field officer found his security clearance downgraded without explanation. And in Washington, one sentence echoed in classified corridors like a forgotten ghost. We have a Kraken problem. The data from Maya's hard drive was out. Not leaked, not public, but circulated through just enough cracks in the government's internal web that someone had to start asking questions. And someone did. His name was Representative Nolan Greaves, freshman congressman from Colorado, former Marine Silver Star recipient, and a vocal critic of unchecked defense spending. Young enough to believe in truth. Green enough to think he could fight for it. He wasn't supposed to see the footage, but a junior staffer on the House Intelligence Subcommittee had flagged a glitch in a black budget surveillance report. One errant data packet, a traceable file ID, the same one Cross had sent. Greaves watched the entire thing in his Capitol Hill office, the drone feed, the betrayal, Harrington's final message. When it ended, he didn't speak for a full minute. Then he turned to his aide and said, "How deep does this go?" "Deep enough that nobody wants to touch it, sir." Greaves looked at the paused image of Maya Cross, blood on her cheek, fire behind her. "Well," he said, "I'm not nobody." Asterisk, asterisk. Back in Syria, Maya moved like a ghost. Her access had been quietly reinstated, but the rules were different now. Her orders came sealed in envelopes. She was moved to a new barracks, smaller, isolated. Her squad had been reassigned without explanation. General Harlan didn't speak to her in public anymore. But sometimes, late at night, she would find notes left in her gear. Coordinates, coded signals, strings of digits that meant nothing to anyone except Krake and Dot. He was helping. Quietly, smartly, but helping God, and that made him a target too. Maya knew the next move wasn't hers to make. She'd done her part, delivered the truth, lit the fuse. Now the fire had to spread on its own dot, so she waited, trained, prepared, because The reckoning wasn't coming with tribunals or courtrooms. It would come like everything else Kraken had faced, through the dark. In a secure office in Virginia. A woman named Jocelyn Neiman, formerly the head of operations at Valencia Systems, opened her personal email to find a video file. No subject line. No sender. The first frame stopped her cold. Her own signature on an authorization form dated 3 days before Operation Foxgate. Below it, typed in black and white, unmanned deployment confirmed. NIPRO. She didn't remember signing that. But the metadata didn't lie. Then came the footage, the drones, the bodies, the betrayal. She poured herself 2 fingers of whiskey and stared at the screen for a long time. By morning, she'd purchased a one-way ticket to Geneva. Representative Greaves began digging. Quietly at first, contacting friends in the GAO, reviewing old weapons contracts, unearthing budget audits marked eyes only. It didn't take long to find the fingerprints. Private drones billed through shell subsidiaries. Off-book deployments of units listed as dissolved. And Kraken, always Kraken, listed in between the lines, never fully named, but always present. In the margins. A ghost scribbled in the spaces of America's darkest operations. He brought it to the Intelligence Committee. They laughed. Old story, one senator said. Cold War ghosts. You'll get over it. But Greaves didn't laugh. He pushed harder. He demanded hearings. He issued internal subpoenas. And that's when the threats started. Phone calls with no voice on the other end. A car parked outside his apartment every night. A leak to a DC tabloid, suggesting he had PTSD. He didn't stop, because the truth had teeth now, and it had started to bite. Meanwhile, Maya found her first ally in uniform. Captain Rachel Monroe, a logistics officer stationed 2 tents down, approached her quietly during mess. She slid a folded napkin across the table with 3 words. I knew Harrington. That night, Monroe told her everything. She'd trained with Kraken briefly, part of an experimental field logistics program. She hadn't been deployed to Dipro, but she remembered the sudden silence, the lies that followed, the paperwork that didn't make sense. I knew it wasn't right, Monroe whispered. But I thought they must have had a reason. They didn't, Maya replied. They just had power. Monroe gave her a burner phone. Use this if you need to run. I'm not running, Maya said. I'm recruiting. In a forgotten server room in Berlin, an anonymous user uploaded the Kraken patch image to a secure message board used by intelligence veterans. The caption read, "One of us made it." Dozens of comments followed, encrypted, brief, about damn time. Ghosts don't forget. Ready when she is. Inside a Pentagon briefing, Dana Kellis slapped her palm on the table. It's unraveling. Piece by piece. Colonel Weller didn't look up. Then it's time we cut the string. You're suggesting? If Cross won't shut up, we shut her down. Kellis hesitated. And the congressman? Weller leaned forward. Crush the leak. Discredit the witness. Delay the hearing. And if that doesn't work? He let the silence finish the sentence. That night, Maya sat alone on the roof of the Combs building, staring out at the stars. The Kraken patch lay flat on her knee. The wind picked up, pulling sand across the steel like whispers. She smiled. They were scrambling now. Good. Let them chase shadows. Because they had made one fatal error. They thought Kraken was a unit. They forgot it was an idea. And ideas, like ghosts, don't stay buried forever. The hearing room was smaller than Maya had imagined. No marble columns, no polished wood. Just white lights, gray walls, and too many microphones. A nameplate sat before her. SGT, Maya Cross, Ret. They made her wear the word in parentheses. Even though she still carried her rifle, still woke up at 0500, still breathed like a soldier. She wore her uniform anyway. Combat fatigues. Sandblasted boots. The Kraken patch sewn just above her heart. Cameras weren't allowed, not for this hearing. But she knew someone was watching. Someone always was. Across the table, behind the steel barrier of government process, Congressman Nolan Greaves nodded once, calm and steady. "You may proceed with your statement," the chairwoman said. Maya leaned forward and spoke. ***. She told them everything. DNIPRO. The drone strike. The silence. The betrayal by their own command. The names of the 3 surviving Kraken operatives. The identities they assumed. The years they lived in exile. She showed them the footage, not the clip, but the full unedited file. Harrington's voice, shaking but clear, describing the betrayal in real time. "They sent us in," he had said, "not to extract, but to erase. We saw something they wanted buried. And now they're burying us with it." The room went cold. A senator coughed into his hand. Maya continued. She handed over copies of decrypted orders. Biometric scans proving she was who she said she was. Financial records linking Valencia systems to secret appropriations hidden within 3 unrelated budget lines. She named every officer who had scrubbed Kraken from the system, every lie they printed, every signature that killed a man without a bullet. When she was done, there was no applause. Just silence. That was how truth landed, not loud, but heavy. ***. Outside the building, protesters had gathered. Some were veterans. Some wore old patches, ones they weren't supposed to still have. Rangers, pararescue, Delta. There was even an older man in a wheelchair, holding a faded Kraken insignia taped to a placard. The ink had run, but the shape remained. Ghosts don't forget. Someone had spray-painted that across the marble steps of the East Wing. Before sunrise, security tried to wash it off. The paint didn't budge. ***, in a corporate high-rise in Arlington. A woman named Dana Kellis sat alone in a shuttered conference room, watching her career implode in real time. She had deleted everything. It didn't matter. The files resurfaced. Leaks. Deadman switches. A trail of ghosts had left fingerprints on everything they once touched. An alert flashed on her terminal. Intel subcommittee calling for audit of Kraken. Case files. Her phone rang. She didn't answer. Some messes can't be managed. Some names don't stay buried. ***. 3 weeks later, the president, under immense bipartisan pressure, issued an executive order to declassify. Operation Foxgate. CNN aired the footage. And for the first time in over a decade, the American public learned the name. Kraken Unit. A black ops force built to operate without boundaries, then erased when it became inconvenient. They saw the patch, the octopus, the trident, the fire. They heard Harrington's final message. And then they saw Maya, standing on a base roof in Syria, wind ripping through her hair, looking into a drone lens as if daring it to blink. They didn't air the entire clip. They didn't have to. The world understood. ***, Representative Greaves introduced a new bill, the Whistleblower Protection for Classified Operatives Act. It stalled for months, but public pressure grew louder. Petitions, interviews, marches in front of federal buildings. Veterans groups joined in. So did tech companies. Even a few foreign journalists who'd once hunted Kraken stories, now validated after years of ridicule. Eventually, a bill passed. Narrowly. But it passed. And for the first time, men and women who operated in shadow could step into the light and demand justice. ***, Maya didn't speak to the press. Not once. She refused every interview. She wasn't here to become a hero. But she agreed to one thing. She would train again. This time, not for war, but for memory. General Harlan arranged it quietly. A base in New Mexico. A private section reserved for veterans seeking reconnection. She called it the surface, a play on words. Ghosts could surface too. Kraken wasn't being rebuilt. It wasn't a unit anymore. It was a movement. A message whispered from one survivor to the next. We made it. You're not alone. Asterisk, on the anniversary of Dnipro, Maya stood at the edge of a shallow canyon in the desert, watching the sunset bleed across the sky. She wore no medals, no rank, just a vest, and on that vest, the Kraken patch, the same one the general noticed all those months ago. She ran her fingers along its stitching, still intact after everything. Behind her, 12 men and women gathered around a fire, former intelligence, special ops, civilian analysts, survivors. Each one held a copy of the patch in their palm. One by one, they sewed it onto new vests. Different colors, different shapes. Same symbol. Not to start something new, but to remember what tried to be forgotten. Asterisk, back in D.C., in the National Archives, a new display was quietly installed. It featured the final decoded transmission from Operation Foxgate. A small plaque read, dedicated to the soldiers who told the truth, even when no one wanted to hear it. Beside it, a replica of the Kraken patch. Beneath it, a single quote from Maya Cross's hearing. You didn't bury a unit. You buried a story. And stories find their way to the surface. Asterisk, later that night, a stranger left a folded letter on the steps of the Capitol. No name, no return address. Just 5 words written in black ink. The patch stays on, always.